Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be covering from the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour finals. It is Jan-Krzysztof Duda with the white pieces against Arjun Erigaisi, and it's really a spectacular game. At one point, one of the players just gives up a piece for 2 pawns. Basically, I think just because it's game 1 to see what will happen. If the opponent's in a good mood, maybe he wins this one, then he just carries it all the way. If he loses one, then maybe he plays the second one a bit more carefully. Yeah, it's a wild game. Then it takes a completely different turn, a wrong turn, if you will. So let's check it out. Duda with the white pieces opens with c4. He goes for the English opening, and we have c6, sort of the Caro-Kann versus the English setup. Knight to f3, pawn to d5, and g3. Now preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop. G6 and queen to a4. Now pinning the c pawn, so c captures on d5 is the idea. Arjun uses this to advance his pawn all the way to d4, and Duda takes this opportunity to advance his pawn all the way to b4. We have bishop to g7, now trying to exploit this diagonal, and of course bishop to b2, countering Arjun's strong bishop on g7. We have pawn to e5, grabbing more space in the center, and pawn to d3, stopping any e4 ideas. We have knight to e7, and now there is a game where knight b to d2 was played, but here we have bishop to g2 by Duda. And it is now, as of move 8, that we have a completely new game. So the game continued, castles by both sides, bishop to e6, and now knight b to d2. So just a very normal developing moves. Knight to d7, we have queen back to c2, making room for the a pawn. We have pawn to a5, and now pawn to a3. We have h6, now preparing some future g5 ideas, and now knight to b3, kind of forcing black to decide whether he wants to advance the pawn to a4 or capture on b4. Here Arjun advances the pawn to a4, and now you'd probably think Duda would just bring the knight back, knight b to d2, but I'm probably going to use this for the thumbnail. Duda just plays knight b captures on d4, and it's not nothing weird. You grab 2 pawns for a piece. Sure, black is better, but only if black plays this perfectly. So let's see, did Arjun play this perfectly? E captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and now knight to f5. And here, a very interesting position where you could capture on e6. And interestingly, even if you didn't just sacrifice material, capturing on e6 looks like such a great move. You create all of these weaknesses that you can later exploit. But Duda does not go for the bishop. He plays knight captures on f5. His idea being that now if bishop captures, you can just grab a whole lot of space. Just bishop captures, king captures, e4. You go after the bishop, after bishop e6, then e4, d4, and you have a massive control here in the center. For your sacrifice piece. So this was his idea. But after knight captures on f5, Arjun said, nope, that's not happening. He played g captures on f5, sort of voluntarily opens up his king, but he has now control over e4, and he says, you are not going to start pushing in the center here. So Duda plays bishop captures on g7, king captures, and rook f to d1. He has to play e3, d4, and at least get something for his sacrificed piece. Queen to f6, and now pawn to e3. We have knight to e5. This is a beautiful move by Arjun, as now d4 is impossible. The c4 pawn would just be captured. So queen to e2, preparing queen e2, rook to c1, adding more defenders to the c4 pawn so he can get this d4 move in, but Arjun takes care of that very nicely. Rook 8 to d8. Now rook 8 to c1, again preparing d4, but now just pawn to b5. Now the c4 pawn is already attacked, so if d4, just knight captures on c4. So c captures on b5, c captures on b5, and now rook to c5. A very nice rook lift by Duda going after the b5 pawn. And here the position is much better. It's straight out winning for Arjun. There's really nothing to worry about other than the fact that you are playing rapid against a World Chess Championship candidate, well, a former World Chess Championship candidate, and he is a very strong player. And what you should play here is bishop to b3. You attack the rook, and once the rook moves, as you kind of want to keep defending that d3 pawn, once the rook moves, you're going to play knight d7 with tempo, attack the rook, and once this rook moves, now offer a rook trade along the only open file on the board, that is the c file, and just cement your advantage. But after rook to c5, Arjun Arjun played knight captures on d3, he thought the tactics were working in his favor, and the idea is, of course, that if rook captures, then bishop to c4 attacks the rook, and the queen is on e2. That's going to be a big problem. But he missed one very important defensive resource from Duda. So Duda just played rook captures on d3, and after bishop to c4, Duda found a very nice move. Basically, the only move that allows him to continue the game. So just to test you guys, if you are present in the game, feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move that doesn't lose for Duda while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the only move that doesn't lose for white. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to d5. This is the only move. What you've done with this move is you've disconnected the rooks basically, and now bishop captures on d3 is the only move. If you don't play this right away, then if white gets a move, you will simply capture on c4, and all of black's ideas are gone. So bishop captures on d3 must be played. Queen captures on d3, and now rook to d6, trying to quickly double up on the d file, but he's just not in time. King to g2, and now what do you play? The problem is now if you go rook to d8, there's just queen captures on b5. You have all the time in the world to get off the d file. So queen to b2, Arjun now goes after the a3 pawn. Now if the white queen moves, you can just start capturing pawns here, and if you create a pass pawn here, that's going to be very important. Queen captures on f5, he even gives up the f5 pawn, and now rook to f6. He thought, okay, this pawn is only in the way of my attack, and now if the white queen moves, I'm going to be attacking the f2 pawn. But the queen moves with check, and now the only move for Arjun to continue playing this is king to h8. It's an ugly move, but you have to play this. Point is that you still have pressure on the f2 square, and now after bishop to f3, the only way to defend properly, you will face rook d8. Now the other rook is coming to d2, but not very quickly, because if this rook ever moves, then rook to c8 will be deadly. So it would be a very complicated game. White would be better, something like e4 would happen, and then, well, if queen captures on a3, just e5, and white continues pushing, you would probably trade queens here, captures, and captures, and you would have this rook endgame where white is up a pawn. White has 2 pawn islands, black has 3 pawn islands, and the white definitely has winning chances here. Whether he would be able to win this, black already has a pass pawn on a4. That's a different question, but that was the only way to play this with black. However, after rook to g6, he allows Duda a spectacular move that Duda plays pretty much instantly, and that is queen to e4. Why this move is so strong, you might think? Well, the move is so strong because you no longer have to worry about the f2 pawn. That's one thing, and the other thing is that if queen captures on a3, then you lose the game terribly. Look at this, queen captures on a3, and now what was the idea? Queen to d4 with check, and now once the king moves, rook to c3, and the black queen is trapped. That was Duda's idea, and that's why queen to e4 is so strong. Now the queen is trapped because if you play queen b1, queen a1, or queen to b2, doesn't really matter. Just bishop captures on f7, and you will lose the queen whatever black plays. If if the king captures, then you can easily just check the king and pick up the queen. And if the rook captures, there's even rook to c8 check. And now if you move the king, you get checkmated. Rook to h8 will be checkmate. And if you don't, if you play rook to f8, then we just trade captures, and queen captures on b2. Duda would be up, well, he would have a queen for a rook. So after queen to e4, rook to f6 was played, but now Duda already has too much. Queen to c2, rook to c2 attacks the queen, queen to b1, and now queen to g4 with check. King to h8, and now again queen to d4, attacking the rook. So basically saying you capture on c2, I'm going to capture on f6, but there is nothing better. If you just repeat king to g7, then something like bishop to e4 can be played, and again, not a lot for black to do here. So after queen d4, queen captures on c2 was played, queen captures on f6, black is still up the exchange. However, after king to g8, e4, cutting off the queen's reach over this diagonal. Queen to c1, now guarding the h6 pawn, but now pawn to h4. We have queen captures on a3. You would love to stay on this diagonal, but you have to create some counterplay, otherwise you're just going to lose. But now queen to g6 with check, not just grabbing the h6 pawn. This is a good example. If you just grab the h6 pawn, then maybe you allow queen to b2, then this diagonal is covered, and maybe you allow black into the game. The passed pawn will now start marching forward. This way you do everything with tempo. Queen to g6 check as the f7 pawn is pinned. That's a weird arrow. And now after king to h8, queen captures again with check, king to g8, queen g6 check, king to h8, queen to f6 check, king to g8, and now pawn to h5. And it was in this position on move 41 that Arjun Erigaisi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. He was also extremely low on the clock. Duda had some 4 minutes, Arjun had some 30 seconds on the clock, and there really isn't anything to try. h6 and queen g7 checkmate is coming. Black cannot grab hold of this diagonal, and even if you try something like h7, let's say h6, threatening checkmate and rook g8, then you give up this pawn. And then after queen captures on f7, king captures on h6, like queen captures on g8, you're down a full rook. Of course, this is resigns. But yeah, he didn't wait for that. After h5, he resigned, and the first game of their 4-game match goes to Jan-Krzysztof Duda. So yeah, that's the first game that I decided to cover. I thought it was a really nice one, Arjun was right straight out of the opening. Pretty much Duda went for that very risky piece sacrifice, but Arjun spent a lot of time. He couldn't figure out how to get out of this, and then he allowed this bishop to d5 move, which basically brought Duda back into the game. And I particularly enjoyed this moment here where after this check, this queen to e4 move was played. I mean, that was just spectacular, just completely denying this a3 pawn to Arjun because of that beautiful line where the black queen just gets captured. So there you have it. That's what it's like to play against a candidates tournament participant that is Jan-Krzysztof Duda, the former candidates tournament. Of course, we'll see what happens in the next one. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Jonathan Bradley, Christopher Norris, Mokasoft, Mikael Arboy, and Fernando Gibson for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and continuing the coverage of the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour finals. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.